interest. So Farhan, what do you know about different business structures and industrialization?
I know like tertiary sector is like providing services to the people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like the only one I know.
Okay. So we'll be more focused on industrialization today rather than primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. So,
Okay.
do you know anything about industrialization?
No.
Okay, industrialization, simply put, is basically just the development of industries in a country. So now there are different industries which are primary, secondary, and tertiary. So, primary sector, do you have any idea what it could be? Make a guess if you have to.
Primary is like using natural resources.
Yes, exactly correct. That's what it is. Can you give me
Okay.
an example?
Um, Farming, does
Yes,
that
yeah,
count?
yes,
Farming, what else? Fishing
yes, fishing as well.
and trees for like oils and whatever.
Yeah, oil extraction. Yeah, so that's completely correct. What about secondary?
Secondary uses like machinery, right?
Yes, it does.
So that includes computers
So it,
and
yeah,
yeah, so includes computers, baking, clothes making, and constructions, basically.
yeah. So okay. So secondary sector, it has more to do with manufacturing. So they will use these the material from the primary sector and make it into goods and products to sell them. So secondary sector is basically the manufacturing sector, and tertiary you already said it, but can you please repeat?
Tertiary is basically providing services to the people.
Yeah, please give me examples.
Hospitals, nurseries, and schools.
Yes, that's enough. That's correct. So you
Yeah.
understand exactly what primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors are.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes. Yes.
Farhan, I can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you understand the different sectors, right?
Yeah, now I do.
Okay. So here, can you please read this?
Okay. Primary sector business activity make use of natural resources in growing crops and gathering and raw materials. The primary sector covers agriculture, forestry, fishing, and extractive industries such as quarrying, mining, fuel, and metals.
Yeah, it should be pretty clear now. And
Yeah.
then have secondary. You can read this as well.
Okay. Sector business activity makes products from the output of the primary sector. Secondary sector activity includes manufacturing and construction.
Yes. And then here, tertiary.
Tertiary sector business activity is the largest sector of the industry and the fastest growing. Tertiary sector activity covers banking, insurance, leisure, transport, public services, communication system, distribution, education, and health services.
Okay. So now that primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors are concept is clear, we'll move on to the changes in business activity. So there are two main features of the classification.
Mm.
Can you read this and then I'll explain and then explain to me what you understood from it?
All right. It is very important to recognize two features of this classification of business activity. The first one is the importance of each sector in an economic changes over time. Industrialization is the term used to describe the growing importance of the secondary sector, manufacturing industries in developing countries. The relative importance of each sector is measured in terms of either employment levels or of output levels as a proportion of the whole economy. In many countries in Africa and Asia, the relative importance of secondary sector activity is increasing. This brings many benefits as well as problems.
Do you understand anything from this?
So industrialization, what I understood is like increasing the usage of secondary sector manufacturing industries in other countries, which makes them to operate more easier. right?
Yes, it's the process in which an economy is transformed from primarily agriculture products to manufacturing of goods. So they're switching from um, a primary
Tertiary
sector.
sector.
Sorry.
So are they basically switching from primary sector to secondary?
Yes. So they're
Or
yeah. So they're moving more towards the manufacturing industry rather than the agriculture one.
yeah, okay,
That simply put, that's what industrialization is. And now it
okay.
has several industrialization has several benefits as well as consequences. So we'll go through each one by one. So please read the first point.
All right. So the first one goes total national output. GDP increases and this raises average standards of living.
Okay, what do you understand from this?
So basically, the benefit is that the GDP will increase for the country and it will raise average standards of living.
What is GDP?
GDP means the gross domestic product, which means one product has a large amount of sale.
So gross domestic product, GDP, is the national output. How much output is an economy generating?
Yeah.
The total amount of goods and services. So when that increases, because how is that increasing because of industrialization? Can you explain that?
Because the people are switching from primary sector to secondary sector, which means more usage of machinery, which means more output.
Yes, exactly correct. So now, since the this will help increase the GDP, which will then increase the incomes or and hence the standards of living of everyone in the economy. You understand
Yeah.
that?
Yes, miss.
Okay. Please move on to the second point.
Increasing output of goods can result in lower imports and higher exports of such products.
Okay, explain, please.
So basically, nowadays people need other products, other, let's say, goods or materials to make one singular product. So instead of that, they can have higher export of such those products because they can make it, I guess.
Uh, so so when there's an increase of output, it will lead to lower imports. So because now the domestic economy, the domestic producers, they themselves are producing, so they don't need to export it anymore. They don't need other people's help to make that product anymore because the domestic
Yeah.
producer will now make it. So this will lead to
Yes.
lower. And now, why is lower imports a good thing for an economy?
Lower inputs is a good thing because they're not buying that much input. Instead, they're selling more rather than buying more.
Yeah, so when there are lower imports, there's less dependency on for these products on other countries or other economies. So
Yeah.
and higher exports of such products. Again, now since now the company and since now the economy is making their own products, they can now export it as well, which will promote trade and improve the overall economic performance of of the economy.
Yeah.
Okay, third point, please.
Expanding manufacturing businesses will result in more jobs
What do you
being
understand from
created.
this?
So I didn't know part of expanding manufacturing businesses. What do you mean by that?
Uh, s- Basically expanding the secondary sector. So now, since there are more products being made within the country, they're expanding businesses. There are more businesses. Basically, there are more job opportunities because
Mm.
the manufacturing, the secondary sector is now much larger than what it used to be.
Yeah, okay.
Do you understand, or do you want me to
Yeah, I
explain it?
did. Yeah,
Okay.
so basically the usage of more secondary sector.
Yeah. So now,
Okay.
the since now there are more businesses, there'll be more jobs, and that will lower the
Mm.
unemployment rate within the economy. Do you understand the third point?
Yes.
Okay, please read the fourth.
Okay, so the fourth point goes expanding and profitable firms will pay more tax to the government.
Please explain what you understand.
So, miss, one question. Are we like looking at the benefits in the point of view of the government or the people?
We are looking at benefits of both, of the people as well as the government. When the people are benefiting,
Okay.
that will automatically make the government benefit as well, because now the people are happier than they used to be.
Yeah. But now this point says that we'll have to pay more taxes. Obviously, more people don't like taxes. So,
Yes, so that can be counted as a consequence as well. But since now we are looking at the benefits, so and these taxes are not always bad. These taxes, the government will reinvest the revenue they make from the taxes into the economy itself, on infrastructure, on creating more jobs, or basically for the well-being of the people itself. So,
all right,
uh,
okay.
okay, understood?
Yeah, yeah, understood. So
Okay,
expanding and profitable firms will pay more tax to the government.
yeah. And the last one.
All right, the last one, value is added to the country's output of raw materials rather than just exporting these as basic unprocessed products.
Do you understand it?
Okay, so basically, there's going to be a value to the products that the country exports,
Yeah, so basically
right?
before the country was only exporting these raw materials. They were extracting these raw materials, and the primary sector was just exporting these raw materials. They weren't doing anything with it. But instead of these just basic unprocessed products, now they're actually making goods out of it. So that's like much better for for the economy, for the country. So
Yeah,
because value is added now. You understand it?
yeah,
Are you
yeah,
sure?
now I understand. Yes.
Okay, explain.
Okay, so basically, for let's say if there's like a country who wants to have more sales, what they could do is they could output more output more raw materials with such needs of the country so they can have more sales.
Yeah, because it's now more valuable.
Yeah, it's more valuable.
Okay. So I can move on. You totally understand all the benefits, yeah?
Yeah,
If there are any doubts, please feel free to stop me anytime.
yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay, read it.
All right. Problems are the chance of working in manufacturing can encourage a huge amount of people from the countryside to the towns, which leads to housing and social problems.
Okay, explain this point.
So basically, many people, so okay, many people are used to in primary sector as their way of making money. And now that the whole secondary sector situation is pushing through countrysides to towns, they will have much bigger problems than housing and social.
Yes, okay. The second one, imports of raw materials and components are often needed, which can increase the country's import costs. What do you understand from this?
Import of okay, so there's need of raw materials from other countries, which are called imports. So the more they need them, the more costs will increase.
Yeah, so now there might be tariffs imposed, which will have to be paid, which will increase these costs. And when you should always remember, when the cost of raw materials are increase, the price of the overall product will also increase. This is called it will cause inflation in the country, because now the raw materials itself is expensive. So there's not
Mhm.
much they can do to lower those costs.
Yeah,
Do you
okay.
understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
understood.
Third point.
Much of the growth of manufacturing industry is due to the expansion of multinational companies.
Do you understand? Explain it, please.
No, I didn't understand this last point.
Okay, so much growth of the manufacturing industry. So when the secondary sector is expanding, that's usually because of MNCs, people, because of foreign direct investment, which is from other countries. Let's say, for example, there's some other country, like for let's say Bangladesh, this one,
Mhm.
America. There are multinational companies from America which are
Yeah.
starting its operations in Bangladesh. This is very common these days, because the cost of manufacturing in Bangladesh, especially for clothing, is much
Mm.
lower than any other country. So America will start its operations in Bangladesh to lower its costs and sell it at a higher margin. So now they'll have more profits. So
Yeah.
when these multinational companies set up in a low income country, they don't care for the environment. They don't care if they're
Oh,
causing
okay.
pollution, or if they're paying low to the employees. They don't care about stuff like that.
Mm.
So this ends up being a problem for the host country, which in this example is Bangladesh. So now the employees will be exploited. There'll be externalities. There'll be pollution in the country.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, I'll move on.
Yeah, you can move on.
Okay, so now here we're talking about deindustrialization.
Mm.
Okay, read this. There's quite a lot to read. Read it, please.
Okay. So the second point is in developed countries, the situation is reversed. There's a decline in the importance of secondary sector activity and an increase in tertiary sector. This process is termed deindustrialization. In the UK, the proportion of total output accounted by the secondary industry has fallen 15% to 23% in 25 years. Reasons for this including,
Wait. Okay. So one of the indicators of developed countries is the percentage and the proportion of their total output in each sector. So underdeveloped countries are mostly reliant on the primary sector, on the agriculture business, whereas developed economies, they are more reliant and they're more developed in the tertiary sector, which is the service sector. So
yeah,
when we're talking about industrialization, that is when an economy is developing, when they're shifting from agriculture to manufacturing. But deindustrialization means when that secondary sector was big before, was large before, but now it's getting smaller. This is due to shift
okay,
from secondary sector manufacturing businesses to tertiary sector service businesses.
okay,
You understand that?
okay. So it's the opposite.
Yes, the opposite. But
Okay,
instead of being reliant on primary sectors, these economies are more reliant on the tertiary sectors.
okay,
Okay, please read the first reason.
okay. So rising incomes associated with higher living standards have led consumers to spend much of their extra income on services rather than more goods. There has been substantial growth in tourism, hotels, and restaurant services. Financial services and so on, yet spending on physical goods is rising more slowly.
Okay, what do you understand from this? I can't hear you.
Just can you explain it? I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'll explain that. Explain it. So, when the economy was developing, when it first started shifting from primary to secondary, and they started having the people started having extra income, they were spending on necessities which they didn't have. They were shifting from low quality goods to better quality goods. But now, when they're getting even higher pay and their income is even higher, now they'll start spending on services. They'll start spending on stuff like the example says, like traveling and going to hotels and eating at good restaurants, because now they can afford to do so. So when they're spending so much on these services, there's so much demand for these services, more businesses start opening, because there's a general increase in the aggregate demand within the country for these services. So when this happens, people start shifting their operations from, because maybe they don't see it more, maybe they see a service business to be more profitable. Maybe opening a restaurant is more profitable than manufacturing clothes, so they'll shift their businesses now. Do you
Okay,
understand?
so the demand of the country is just changing naturally.
Yeah. Okay. You understand that?
Yeah, understood.
If you want me to explain again, I can.
No, I understood. So
Okay.
basically the country is just changing itself.
Yes. Can you read the second point?
Okay. All right, so as the rest of the world industrializes, so manufacturing businesses in developed countries face much more competition, and these rivals tend to be more efficient and use cheaper labor. Therefore, rising imports of goods are taking the market away from the domestic secondary second sector firms.
Okay. Do you understand this, or do you want me to
I
explain?
I understand half of it.
Okay, explain what you understood.
So what I understood is basically in the UK there's more competition like this since there's more competition with other manufacturing businesses using cheaper labor, it becomes hard to compete.
Yes, that's exactly what the point is saying. So, there is the world, like everyone can, all the countries, they engage in trade with other countries. So when this is happening, maybe what my country is selling for $5, some other country can be selling it for much cheaper, let's say $2, just because of cheap labor. Like the example I gave of America and Bangladesh. America might be able to sell their clothes for cheaper, way cheaper than other countries, because they're utilizing the cheap labor in Bangladesh. So because they're paying
Yeah,
their employees less, so their demand is naturally going to be higher for a cheaper product than something that is more expensive. So
mm,
it becomes harder for the domestic secondary firms to compete with these multinational companies, and people will just prefer to import it because that is much cheaper than promoting domestic firms.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, you understand that part?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, do you want me to explain it again?
Yeah, can you like make it more easier?
Yes, I can. So, my the citizens in America, if they buy from a manufacturing business within America, they might be paying more for the same clothes, for the same exact clothes, than what they will be paying if they import from Bangladesh because of the cheaper raw materials that Bangladesh is utilizing. So the total cost of, I'll give you an example. The total cost of creating any piece of clothing within America would be $5. So they're not like, obviously they're not going to sell it at $5 itself. They want to have some sort of profit margin. So they sell
Yeah.
it at $7. But the same thing that in Bangladesh is being the cost of production, the overall cost of production of the same piece of clothing in Bangladesh will be $2. And even if they keep a profit margin, of the same profit margin, they can sell it for $4. So would you prefer buying that for $7 or for $4?
$4.
Yeah, so that's exactly what this point is saying, that now the same uh, company that's selling it for $7 will go out of business because no one is buying these
Mm.
clothings from that business anymore.
All right, so it become okay, so basically so it increases competition and secondly increases prices.
Yeah, so it's increased, the competition is much higher now, and this higher competition will make it a lot harder for domestic firms to survive within the market.
Yeah, okay, understand.
Are you 100% sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Please read the third part.
Okay. The importance of each sector varies significantly between different economies. Table 2.1 gives details to the difference that exists between three different countries' economies and the share of total employment accounted for by each sector of industry.
Yeah, so if you look at UK, the primary sector is very small and the
Yeah.
tertiary sector is the biggest. So what does that say about the country?
It says that the tertiary sector, which means providing services to the people, is much more bigger than primary and secondary.
Yes, exactly that. And compare that with Ghana at the
Okay, so comparing it to Ghana, primary, since Ghana is located in like the nature side, they use their own resources. So that's why they have primary sector.
Yeah, so when you look at Ghana, their primary sector is the biggest. Their agriculture business is the biggest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's because that's a clear indication that it's a less developed country because it's
Mhm.
heavily reliant on its primary sector
Nature.
than Yeah, then it is on the tertiary. So the easiest way to tell whether whether an economy is developed or not will be through seeing which, if the primary sector is the largest sector or tertiary. But when secondary sector is the biggest industry, then that means that it's a developing country, and primary is underdeveloped and tertiary is developed.
Okay, understood.
Okay. And
But what about
when
China?
yeah, I was coming to China itself. So China's biggest industry is primary
Yeah,
sector. They're reliant on primary sector. But when you look at secondary and tertiary, those industries aren't small either. When you look at
yeah,
when you look at your UK, it has a very small primary sector. And this difference there's a stark difference between primary and tertiary, but that's not the same with China. There's not such
mm,
a huge difference. So this can be an example of deindustrialization. You can assume from the table that since secondary sector is only 26 and tertiary is 32, you can tell
mm,
that the economy is moving from secondary to tertiary. It's developing.
yeah, understood.
Okay, so I think that's enough for today.
Oh, okay.
Unless you want me to go over, if you would, unless you want to go over private and public sector as well.
No, no, I've taken this. I'll write it down in my notebook as notes.
Okay, sure. It's up to you.
Yeah, okay. Bye,
Okay,
miss.
bye bye. Okay, you